Shalom uvracha, this is Rabbi Donn, the vegan rabbi, and we are on Lifnei Iver, session 4. When we speak about Kashrus, we understand that it's a command from God, and as with all commands, naseh v'nishma, that means that we'll do it, and then afterwards we'll begin to analyze it. When it comes to Kashrus, there's an overarching idea of energy, and energy in the food. And we understand that certain animals are kosher, certain animals are not kosher, or tahor and not tahor. And the distinction between these animals is whether they're carnivorous or vegetarian. And many have explained that better than anyone else, we understand you are what you eat. So if you eat a lion, a tiger, or a bear, you're going to be violent, you're going to be overly aggressive, and that's not a behavior that's becoming of a Jewish person. What we want is a more passive or more peaceful behavior, and that is exhibited by the animals that are vegetarian. Because when you eat something, you take on that energy, and then that becomes your energy. Along those lines, I'd like to share a Devar Torah that came to me on a Shabbos night a few months ago. It was about Mei Merivah. That is when Moshe hits the rock instead of speaking to the rock. And as a result of that, God says, "You will not take the people into the land of Israel because you did not sanctify my name." Now, in analyzing that, and we must, what was lost here? The opportunity to come into the land, to bring the people into the land. So the question is, who sinned? Was it the people who sinned? Was it Moshe who sinned? And what was the gravity of the sin? What was the nature of the sin to cause the effect? What was the midah keneged midah? Why, by hitting the rock, did it cause Moshe not to be able to go in? And surely there were other things that he, and if you're going to say it's his only sin, so one sin that he did, and because of that he's going to lose the opportunity to come into the land, that really doesn't satisfy the answer. And the Arizal says, by the way, had Moshe come into the land, we know he would have built the Beis HaMikdash, and the Arizal says they never would have eaten meat. We can discuss why that would be at a later date, but the world would have returned to the perfection as it was before the sin of Adam and Eve, Adam v'Chava, of eating the fruit from the Eitz Hadas. So I thought, when was the other time in Jewish history that the world had returned to its perfect state? And that was at Matan Torah, at Har Sinai. Death had left the world, and the world had returned to that perfect state. But I thought to myself, why would it be at Matan Torah? Why shouldn't it be at the crossing at the Yam Suf? Because there it says, Ra'ata shifcha al hayam ma shelo ra'a Yechezkel ben Buzi. The most simple and lowly person saw God with greater clarity than one of our greatest prophets. And they sang song to God, Vayaminu b'Hashem u'Moshe avdo. There was incredible belief and closeness and unity with God. Whereas by Mount Sinai, they said to Moshe, we're afraid, we're running away. You tell us what Hashem says. We're too afraid to listen to Hashem. And we know that they were running away after, Ketino kaborech mi beit hasefer. So why then, if there's so many things lacking by Har Sinai and by Yam Suf, it seems like it was a unified festival with God, why would the bringing back of the world to perfection be at Matan Torah and not at Yam Suf? So I thought, well, there is an incident that happens after Yam Suf, after the crossing, but before they get to Mount Sinai. And that happens at Marah. Marah is a place where there was water, but it was bitter. And God had to fell a tree into the water, which sweetened it up, and the people were able to drink. I was thinking, where else did we hear about bitter water in the Torah. Sota, that's with the woman who is suspected by her husband to be untrue, unfaithful. And the procedure there is that the man brings the woman to the priest, and the priest takes a cup of water, takes dirt from the Mikdash, and also takes a scroll that he has written with God's name, dips it into the water, into which God's name gets erased, and the woman drinks this Hamayim Hame'arim Hamarim, these cursed bitter waters. So now we have bitter waters that is linked with the term cursed. Let's now understand what it is about the nature of water. There's a Japanese scientist whose name was Dr. Emoto, and you can find his experiments on YouTube. And what he did in his first experiment was take 2 cups of water and place the word love taped on one glass and the word hate taped on another. He then froze the water, and with an electron microscope, he photographed the water crystals. And in repeated experimentation, he found similar results, that the words on the glass gave higher energy. And what this did was created amazing, intricate mandalas. So the water realigned itself in these beautiful mandala-shaped figures, whereas in the negative energy glass with the word hate, the water molecules were basically just spread out, disparate, nothing unified, and almost frightening looking in their appearance. So now they did more experiments, and they took some of this reconstituted water or repaired water, and they took a thimble of it and poured it into a bathtub of untouched water, just regular water. And what they found was that the higher vibration of this little thimble of water reconstituted or realigned all of the water that was in the bathtub. Now, what does this remind us of? When we make Kiddush, we take from the blessed cup and we pour it into other cups. Even if there was previously wine there, it takes on the blessing. And the reason for this is, we've been doing this for thousands of years. We have been sending positive energy, which is absorbed by the liquid. And then what we do is we drink it. And what are we? We are 80 to 90% liquid. That realigned, positive charged liquid positively charges everything in us. And we have been doing this. We are energy manipulators, and we haven't even known this. But think about when you can pour wine back, when you can't pour wine back, and actually these laws of energy are followed in all of our customs. Okay, so now let's get back to the waters at Mara. The waters were bitter. Were they physically bitter? Taste-wise? Possibly. Were they low energy? Were they cursed waters? Yes. So what Hashem did was put the tree in there, which brought up the energy and sweetened them, enabled them to drink the water. And then what happened to them? Once they drank these high energy waters, their eyes opened up and they were able to see because their spiritual levels came up. So now when they approached Har Sinai and experienced this event, they experienced it with open eyes, enabling them to revert the world back to the state of perfection. Whereas when they came out of Mitzrayim, even though that event was incredible, that event was amazing, it was unified, but still, relatively speaking, they were going through it with closed eyes. So now let's go back to Mei Merivah. What happened there with the information that we have? We can use it as tools to analyze. The people were getting prepared to go into the land of Israel. They asked for water, and God gave Moshe instructions on how to extract that water. Had Moshe followed along exactly according to plan, that would have been a Kiddush Hashem. It would be a sanctification of God's name. What would have been the nature of that water? It would have been amazing, the most healthy water one could ever imagine. But what in fact happened? He didn't listen. The people were arguing with him. The rock was even arguing with Moshe. It wouldn't give its water. And he ultimately hits the rock, which produces a chilul Hashem, a desecration of God's name, and the water comes out, and it's terrible water. It's the worst possible water anyone could drink. And they drink it, and what happens to them? Their eyes close tightly. So even if Mashiach would have bumped into them, they never would have recognized him because their eyes were so closed. They could have gone to the moon. They could have gone into the land of Israel, and it would not be an earth, a universal changing effect, because the people's eyes were closed because of the negative, the Chilul Hashem waters that they drank. And that explains why Moshe could not go in. And it explains the whole event there. Let's come back and think about the laws of Kashrus, what it does to us. When we take in food, it changes our nature. And then when we change our nature, we see the world differently. We act differently. You eat violence, you will be violent. You eat peace, you will be peaceful. Okay? So this really gives us a much broader and intensive idea of why a plant-based lifestyle and diet is so vitally important. Moreover, how damaging the violence and the cruelty and the tsar ba'alei chayim and the chilul Hashem that people are taking into their bodies, what else could it create but disease? That's why we're seeing cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, etc. And we're seeing so much violence because people are taking this in. So now we understand that food has within it great energies. And these are the reasons for the laws of Kashrut, to give us positive energy. But unfortunately, because the rigging that has gone on in our day, they have a positive energy sticker on it, which says kosher, but it's really packaged with low energy. I felt that this was very important to give to you because it explains in just a better way, in a more philosophical way, and gives us tools to understand the laws of Kashrus. And what I have found is even great speakers and representatives of the vegan world, sometimes they get stuck or stumped by people who are religious or people who are fundamental and have mistranslated, to have domain. We understand that is to le'avda u'l'shamra. Bitch, by the way, are both female possessive words. Let's go into Lifnei Iver. And on page 15, the second paragraph is worthwhile to read. Upon the verse, when an ox or a sheep or a goat is born, it shall remain with its mother for 7 days. The Lubavitch Rebbe expounds, the concept of mercy is understood from childhood to mean a human may not subject an animal to undue anguish or pain. Tsar ba'alei chayim. After this verse, the Torah states, do not desecrate my holy name. For this command stems from mercy and is understood to mean we may not subject a mother animal to pain by separating her from her child immediately after birth. And we know, and there are videos all over YouTube, whether it's in America or Israel, that baby cows are separated at birth from their mother. And this is absolutely asur deoraisa. On page 16, do animals experience anguish? Rambam states, there is no distinction between anguish experienced by a human and anguish experienced by animals. This is because the love and yearning of a mother for its offspring is not dependent upon intelligence. Rather, it is the inherent nature found in most creatures, as it is found in man. Continuing on, we see Nachmanides, Ramban states, animals experience worry, and there is no distinction between the worry of a human to the worry of an animal for its children, because the love of a mother towards the children from its womb is not dependent upon intelligence or speech. Rather, it is a function of the consciousness that is found in animals and human beings. You see with which they write, the compassion, the understanding of animals with which they write. Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch states, as does a human, animals feel and sense being cut, being pushed, being smitten, being overworked, being in fear and panic, being hungry and being thirsty. At times, a person may forget this because of being self-absorbed or hoping to complete a plan, or by being unaware or a desire to be cruel. And a person will cause anguish to the soul of his animal. They will torture and give pain to the soul of a living creature. We don't have these sensitivities. Unless you have a pet at home, you clearly understand this. But when you get packaged meat, or when people get packaged meat or eggs or milk or cheese, they never think of this. But all you have to do, as we know, is just watch one of those movies and you'll see that all of the statements of our rabbis are being ignored. Our good friend Rab Isaac Habenstreit states, I will explain the rationale of the rabbinic statement. It is forbidden to place the eggs of a different species of bird into the nest of another species because of tsar balei chaim. At first glance, we do not understand what anguish an animal experiences. However, and he's writing in the 1910, 1920, 1930, scientists have determined that feelings of anguish, sadness, and mercy and anger found in humans are also found in animals. So again, you see numerous rabbis. This is shocking, right? Because we don't expect rabbis to be talking about animals. But again, because we have so little contact with animals today, we find this perhaps strange or unexpected. Now, I did see in an article today I was researching, I know that Rabbi Moshe Feinstein had forbidden people to eat veal and foie gras. This was back in the 70s. And I read today that his son-in-law, Rabbi Tendler, did some research. He went to a farm in Vineland. It's a Jewish farm where they raise veal, I guess. And he was so impressed with the conditions being so much better than they were years ago when he first investigated it. So there's a rumbling today, maybe the Isur, the prohibition of eating veal by Reb Moshe will be lifted. But that may be one veal place, but we who have investigated these issues can pretty much guarantee that this is the exception to the rule, and horrible conditions exist everywhere else. So they may have brought him, to the, they put the window dressing up when Rabbi Tendler came, but that is not the case, as we know. At this point, the writer enumerates all of the terrible things that happen in normal processing in Israel, like grinding of the chicks. I mean, this, if you've seen videos of it, it's so heartbreaking. A chicken is born, and on its first day of birth, they grind it up alive if it's a male because it's of no monetary value to them. They chop off the beaks of the chickens with no anesthetic. They electrocute the chickens. Calves are separated from their mothers, cutting off of horns, confining milk calves in very small containers, disabling even minimal movement. That's for veal. Birds are slow, genetic enhancements. He goes through the list. On page 18, note how strict our rabbis of blessed memory were to not subject animals to anguish, and certainly not to subject them to extreme anguish. Thus it is written, a wise person will listen and add goodness. Rabbi Judah the Chassid did not raise chickens at all, since he was not able to be careful enough not to cause them anguish. And he states, it is not advisable for a person to raise birds, for one is responsible to feed them, and the sin and punishment for not doing so is great. We have to be very, very mindful. That is actually quoted in the Pele Yoetz. And as I stated in a previous lesson, the Peleiotes in 1800 went around to all of his slaughterhouses and decided that there's no such thing. It doesn't exist. Kosher meat does not exist. It's a fantasy, because he saw that nobody was doing shechita properly or running their shechita properly. The next step in the reasoning is items from which having a benefit is forbidden. So the idea is, okay, you have not abused an animal. You have not, for instance, stolen an item, but are you allowed to buy that item? Because by buying it, you're enabling the continuation of this behavior. At this point, the discussion gets into Lifnei Iver lo sitein michshol, not putting a stumbling block in front of the blind. And it doesn't only mean literally a blind person, it means somebody who is, for instance, somebody who doesn't keep Shabbos, and you want to switch your schedule with them because, well, they're not going to keep Shabbos anyway, so let them take my shift, which is on Shabbos, and I can be at home enjoying my Shabbat. That's not allowed. Maimonides decrees one who causes the blind to stumble by giving them faulty advice or by enabling them to commit a sin. That's what we're talking about here. The sinner is referred to as being blind because their passions blind them from seeing the true path. A person who enables them transgresses a negative commandment, for the verse states, do not place a stumbling block before the blind. So therefore, if we buy products from this industry that is violating all of these Torah laws, we are committing that sin of putting a stumbling block before them because we are enabling the continuation of this bad behavior. At the end of page 23, we read, the production methods in animal factories are well known to us today, and all of the violations we have previously mentioned are not happenstance. Rather, they are the primary methods employed by this industry. Moreover, we are not referring to the situation when a forbidden action is performed for its own purpose. Rather, these prohibitions are being done in our name. Thus, it is literally a case of two people standing on either side of the river. That is another Talmudic phrase for two people joining together to commit a sin. One who keeps the Torah and the commandments cannot be an active partner in the transgression of Torah prohibitions and strengthening the hand of those who commit violations by giving them money. It is the purchasing of these goods that enables the continuation of these Torah infractions. This will end session 4. In our next session, we are going to take on the adage, joy is only attained with meat and wine. Ein simcha ela bebasar v'yayin. That is a fun topic, and I look forward to you tuning in. Thanks so much.